Well, I guess you're all pretty familiar with this style of motor. You've got the motor itself, and this has got a stand on it, but some you might have some mounting bolts here, or they might pick up on some bolts here, or even on the front face, mount it somewhere like that, or even some of them are clamped around the outside. And then you've got a shaft, like a D-shaped shaft with a flat on it, and then the blade pushes on and it's locked on with a grub screw. And that's pretty much how they used to be for years. I mean, you probably go back on something that's 50 years old and they've still got the same style. I mean, motors would be a bit different, but you'd recognise them as being the same thing. Well, a lot of modern stuff, something to balance that, is coming out with this style of fan. Guard mounted, I think they call them an axial guard mounted motor, or some combination of those words. This one, there's two sorts of these really. This one appears you've got the shaft coming out here and this sort of blade mounted on a disc-shaped piece. What it does do, it make a very compact fan blade and everything. If you had a standard style, the motor would probably stick out to here, so it makes the unit compact. You can have the compressor on a condensing unit, you can have the compressor nearer the condenser, so the less materials on the base, so there's less transport costs, all sorts of things. This is probably cheaper to make, it's probably quicker to fit in the factory because they'd buy it in one piece. They've got 4 bolts and the cable, whereas the other ones they've got to fit the blade, bolt the motor down, fit the guard and wire it, so it takes out a lot of steps really. There's sort of two basic styles of these that look the same. Some of them don't even have the terminal box, some of them are flush and you've just got a flex coming out. This one looks like a standard. I'll have to take that bolt out and see, might do that in a minute. Looks like it's got a standard rotor in the centre and an external stator, but they do have some of these that are external rotor motors where the windings are in the centre and that part is bolted to the guard, and then the fan blade is actually mounted on the outside. This part here would be the rotor, and this would stretch all the way back to here, and the blades would be mounted sort of similarly to how they are here. And in those cases the rotor is outside of the windings rather than being inside, like in a conventional motor. And again, I suppose it's one less part because your fan blade is actually part of the motor rather than it being a separate part. And again, they're very shallow. One thing to be careful of with these is they do a lot of different speeds. They can be 2 pole, 4 pole, 6 pole. And the other thing is you can match them up by the blade size, whether they are blowing or sucking on the air movement direction. But you also need to be very careful with, apart from the voltage, you need to be very careful with the wattage. So a lot of them, if you're not careful, you can buy some cheaper pattern parts where the motor might only be 100 watts, whereas the original one was 150, so it's probably got a steeper pitched blade. Obviously that's going to affect your airflow and your condensing temperatures. Let's see if we can get that bolt undone. Right, we've got the bolt undone with my trusty old brittle 1/2" ratchet. It doesn't get a lot of use nowadays. Mostly use a 3/8 ratchet now because a lot of the stuff we do is smaller. Anyway, I started trying to undo that and I couldn't get it to move. And something that's worth trying with things, if they won't turn easily one way, is give them a try the other way, and it's turned out that's actually got a left-hand thread on it, which is probably done to stop it unscrewing as the motor's turning. So if you're trying to undo something and it doesn't move, it's always worth giving it a little bit of a tweak the other way, just to see what happens. Anyway, so that's our fan blade. That's our drive. It has got a D shaft, but we've got this aluminium drive plate, which I think is probably pressed onto there or glued. We had some thread lock compound underneath this screw. It's that green stuff that's flaking off. Yeah, so in some of them that piece would be fixed, and that would be fixed to the guard. The blades would be mounted on the outside here. When you powered it up, the outside part would spin and the centre piece would be held. Well, let's see if we can. It's held together with some Torx screws. I've got the lid off the terminal box, and that's our wiring diagram. Live and neutral in, doesn't really matter where you put them. Motor doesn't care, as long as they're in the right tube. If you get them, probably if you swap the one of the, say they're live from there to here, it'll probably run backwards. Got a 4 microfarad capacitor on there, so it's a PSC, permanent split capacitor motor. You could check that, because I've took this off because the motor's failed. We could check. I've got a 5 microfarad there. We'll just test the prove the meter's working okay. We get 5. If we try it on our 4, nothing. So maybe that's failed. The motor's been sat stalled, and it's eventually cooked the windings. It's quite a likely scenario for it failing. If it's not the bearings, then the next favourite thing is the capacitor's gone. It's worth saving all these little bolts. Get a tin or something and keep them in the van. You never know, you might take something apart and drop one. It's much easier to go to your tin and find one than rummaging around somewhere on the floor. Right, might have to lever this with something, I think. I think it's probably off of that. Yeah, it's off of that there. Right, we've got the bearing levered off. Well, not there, the bearing, the end plate levered off the bearing rather. Interesting, they have like a little crinkly washer in there, like an anti-rattle thing. It's always putting a bit of thrust on the bearing. Anyway, you can see there where it's all green and burnt, and some little bubbles of crap have come out of it. So it's damp. Better not be acidic or my finger will get dissolved, but you can see how crispy. It's just fallen to bits. That's the cable tie. But these look okay, but this side looks in this area here, where it looks burnt. See how hot it's got. It's got hot enough for the insulation's gone brittle. It's just cracked where I've bent it. See if we can get that pulled off of there. Right, we've used the BFH on it, and that's got this removed now. It's quite a nice casting, really. It looks like it's had some sort of Loctite or something on there. Anyway, there's a sort of D shaft, 2 bearings. What do they say on them? Indonesia NSK. It's probably what I do feel a little bit, raw. That's the windings. I've certainly seen worse, but I've seen better too. It's that corner there. It looks particularly burnt. Some of the others look better. There's a lot of sort of fur in here as well, so I don't know whether maybe it's had damp in there. I'm not sure now whether that was down the bottom and it's had some damp in it, and that's it's a bit damp now, but that might have got in there where it's been stored. I think it's been inside since I took it off. But that was definitely shot, so it's probably just sat there and cooked itself. Another one for the scrap pile.